Welcome to Novel Navigator, where every story is an adventure waiting to unfold. If you're a fan of powerful plots, unforgettable characters, and immersive narration, you've just found your new favorite destination. If you enjoy the story, please like, subscribe, and share the channel with your friends and family. Your support helps keep these stories alive and growing. This is Novel Navigator, guiding you through worlds of imagination, one chapter at a time. Chapter 51. 51. All plan the cleverness of the Inferno Tyrant in utilizing its active skill, infernal presence to disrupt the team's momentum and cooperation prompted Su Feng to realize his underestimation of its intelligence. They might be nerfed currently, but it seems like their battle instinct hasn't decreased at all. He concluded, feeling the need to reevaluate the monsters in the divine world. When pressured well enough, these monsters could sometimes regain their battle instinct and put up a strong resistance. The intense heat is affecting all of us. Gentle Wind smiled bitterly when her spells were either fizzled out midair or missed the target. Only 1/3 of her spells managed to land on the target, but even then, the damage was greatly diminished. Despite that, her situation was actually greater than the rest, with some of them even missing their spells completely. As everyone's struggle became more apparent, Su Feng's pressure increased tremendously. Clearly, everyone was now expecting him to make a response. Isn't this just forcing me to showcase more? He smiled bitterly. The situation seemed grim, but it wasn't unsalvageable. After all, if he didn't anticipate all the different types of scenarios, then he wouldn't have even bothered attempting this raid. However, the problem was he didn't want to show off too much. The more he showed off, the more attention he would receive, and by that time, the excuses and lies he came up with would be exposed sooner or later. No lies would be able to last too long if you have to use many more lies to cover up the initial one. Faking a cough, Su Feng turned to Autumn Breeze and asked, "Do you have any lesser elementalists that are of ice or water element?" Surprised, Autumn Breeze took a brief second before nodding her head. "Yes, I have a water elementalist, but not ice yet." She was surprised mainly because she didn't think he would ask such a basic question. Given his expertise so far, she thought he would have known about her skills tree. Naturally, Su Feng also knew she only had water elementalist, but to lessen his capability, he forced himself to ask such basic questions. "All right, summon the water elementalist and have them go toward these locations," he instructed, informing her of the specific coordination. But will it work? Autumn Breeze raised an eyebrow. "The heat is too intense, and my water elementalist is barely capable of withstanding the heat before it gets vaporized. It's either if you can do it or you can't." Su Feng changed his tone, turning into a strict commander. Stunned by the change of tone, Autumn Breeze realized she had asked too much. Without delaying it further, she waved her wand and summoned 3 water elementalists, controlling them to head toward the coordinates that Su Feng had listed out. And with no surprises, the water elementalists were vaporized by the intense heat after 10 seconds. Just when Gentle Wind and Autumn Breeze began to wonder about his actions, Su Feng suddenly yelled out a retreat. Split into 3 teams, with 2 tanks going with 2 sorcerers. Clerics are divided into 1 team each at the vaporized area. There's 2 extra tanks in that case. Gentle Wind quickly calculated. The extra 2 tanks will be in the center, as well as Autumn Breeze. "We're going to be the frontal core," he explained in a heartbeat. With the new arrangement, the members quickly coordinated to their best effort. 1 Berserker and 1 Gun Knight were situated on the left side, along with 1 Cleric and 2 Sorcerers. And on the right side, 1 Berserker and 1 Knight Lancer was the tank, along with the 1 Cleric and 2 Sorcerers. Meanwhile, in the center, the remaining 2 Berserkers, 2 Gun Knights, 1 Knight Lancer, Autumn Breeze as the summoner, Gentle Wind along with another timid female sorcerer. Su Feng stood behind them, mainly because they believed he was the weakest one, and he was too lazy to even try to explain that he was not some weak healer. In total, the 19 of them were now coordinated into a strategic position, with the remaining member, Steel Shot, who was probably still wailing at his miserable fate in the passage. A few seconds later, the members were somewhat confused initially by the position Su Feng told them to go. But upon arriving at the position, they finally realized the pressure of the infernal presence had diminished. Although not by much, their original pressure had indeed lessened because of Autumn Breeze's skill effectively countering the intense heat emitted by the boss. However, what made it frightening was their current position now was quite ideal in attacking the boss. With so many different positions, it would prove difficult for the boss to target them all in one attack. Wait a minute, if we can split off to make it difficult for the boss to target us, then why didn't we do so from the start? Autumn Breeze began pondering over the reasoning. Suddenly, she recalled the time when the Inferno Tyrant retaliated in response to their offense with fiery retaliation. If we had been split off by that time, then we would have suffered immense casualties. She felt a sudden chill upon realizing how intimidating and strategically minded Su Feng was. The fiery retaliation from the boss was deadly, and if it weren't for the fact that they stood together and defended simultaneously, a lot of them would have mostly died. He had it all planned. She mumbled, having no choice but to admit Su Feng's foresight and insight was far superior to theirs. The look she had for Su Feng changed completely from their initial meeting. Meanwhile, Su Feng felt like crying when he could sense the deep stare that Autumn Breeze had. Given she was a summoner and not supposed to be near the front, she stood next to him, albeit further to the left. Thus, he could sense it and wanted nothing more than to beat the Inferno Tyrant to a pulp. All of his arrangements were slowly coming to light one after another because of his sudden battle instinct. Why can't you just accept your death peacefully? It's not like you won't respawn when another challenger comes in. Su Feng clenched his fist. Chapter 52. 52. You had to ask as Autumn Breeze's impression of Su Feng continuously increased. Su Feng himself was feeling anything but proud. Please stop being impressed by me. He wanted to hide his ability as much as possible. He did not want to show off at all. This was supposed to be a quick business deal with no attachment. How was he supposed to advance further if people became interested in him so early on? Suddenly, Su Feng was enlightened and seemed to have realized a great method to get Autumn Breeze to dislike him. Turning to her, he chuckled lightly and said in a somewhat cute tone, "Pretty awesome, right? Sometimes I really am just that amazing. Don't you agree? Others say I'm acting awesome, but I'm just born awesome. Ah, this is why I never like to reveal myself often. Indeed, you are really awesome." Autumn Breeze flashed a graceful smile and gave him a thumbs up. This kind of unexpected response nearly stumped Su Feng. Clearly, he was expecting her to become disgusted at his supposedly cute tone and acts. Alas, if Su Feng knew his display of capability so far had completely changed her impression of him, then he wouldn't have attempted such an embarrassing act. After all, now that he had proven himself, whatever words he said would be soothing to one's ears. Not to mention, Autumn Breeze only hated those who talked big but couldn't back it up. Thus, she was absolutely fine with his impromptu act, despite being surprised initially. Feeling his face burning up, Su Feng was relieved that he had a mask covering his face. Otherwise, he might really have to dig a hole and bury himself. Ah, didn't you hate me earlier and was always against me? What's with the sudden change of behavior? He lamented inwardly, realizing his charm was just simply too high to be stopped. Thankfully, there was no time for small banter when the Inferno Tyrant's attack phase resumed. All right, focus up. The left side will be called Team 1, and the right side will be called Team 2. When I make the command for your specific team, you'll do as follows. Su Feng shouted loudly. Autumn Breeze, start off by summoning your lesser elementalist and shield it. I want you to control it toward the open area there. He turned to her and said, pointing at a large empty area. Initially confused, Autumn Breeze soon realized what he was trying to achieve. Got it, she said, summoning the water elementalist specifically and shielding it properly this time. By the time the water elementalist appeared, the Inferno Tyrant seemed to be infuriated. Its glaring magma eyes were locked on the water elementalist. It was quite clear that the appearance of the water elementalist reminded them of the failure of pressuring the intruders. Very clever. Su Feng praised her, having instantly grabbed the aggro from the boss. Of course, Autumn Breeze's intelligence is not one to be fathomed with. Gentle Wind suddenly chimed in, seemingly acting quite mysteriously. Her words seemed to have hidden some deep meaning, but Su Feng's mind was too occupied to care about at the moment. While the Inferno Tyrant overlooked the rest and focused solely on the water elementalist. Su Feng began his command. Team 1, use Brutal Bash and armor-piercing round bullets at the left of the Molten Leg. Sorcerers, remain in your position and try your best to angle the trajectory of your spells before firing. Turning his attention to the right side swiftly, he instructed Team 2, use Savage Slam and Jousting Sweep simultaneously at the left Molten Arm. Same thing for the sorcerers, but remain steady and calm. No need to rush things. As for us, we shall wait. Su Feng then mumbled softly to Gentle Wind while asking for the timid female sorcerer username. You're talking about Silent Whisper? Gentle Wind raised an eyebrow. Did she do something wrong? No. I was just curious since she's a sorcerer like you. Su Feng shook his head, and he continued, later on, it's going to be the final struggle of the boss. So it'll need you to remain focused completely. There can be no mishaps. I understand. Gentle Wind nodded and clenched tightly on her staff, her expression turning solemn. Sometime later, Team 1 and Team 2 completed their task flawlessly, as the Inferno Tyrant focused its attention entirely on the water elementalist, ignoring the others. In its mind, the pitiful amount of players attacking him was nothing but futile damage. Just when it finally caught up to the water elementalist and annihilated it with a fierce magma palm strike, the Inferno Tyrant finally realized its movement was disturbed. The collective damage dealt upon his left leg and left arm made him somewhat balanced on one foot. The gravitational impact of it was slowly causing him to fall down. Now, Gentle Wind and Silent Whisper, aim your spells at the boss right torso. Su Feng commanded and buffed Gentle Wind specifically. With the buff, Gentle Wind's spell damage increased, as well as its knockback effect, prompting the Inferno Tyrant to collapse from its mighty height position. At the same time, Su Feng was eyeing someone very closely. Oh, they can still endure it, huh? Well, it's not like you have a chance either. He thought to himself, wondering if he should allow them an opportunity. It was just a shame that his thought process was interrupted by another loud roar from the Inferno Tyrant. It's roaring again? Autumn Breeze rolled her eyes. Does it know anything else other than roaring? As soon as Autumn Breeze finished her question, the Inferno Tyrant started to float in the air, deflecting everyone that was nearby it, specifically the tanks such as Berserkers and Night Lancers who had to go on melee range. While the rest were astonished by the situation, the Inferno Tyrant started spitting out magma from its mouth. From within the magma that was spit out, they slowly merged until their appearance looked no different than lava golems. You had to ask, didn't you? Su Feng gazed at Autumn Breeze, followed by Gentle Wind and nearly everyone in the area. Chapter 53. Despair. A moment of silence occurred, with almost everyone gazing at Autumn Breeze, mainly because she had to ask if the boss could do anything else other than roaring, and the boss proceeded to summon lava golems to his command. The timing of such an incident couldn't be any worse for Autumn Breeze, as they now believed she was a jinx. There's no way the boss reacted because of my question, right? She smiled awkwardly. It was clearly not her intention to try to make the raid any more difficult than it already was. Luckily, Gentle Wind sighed softly and turned to Su Feng. You aren't going to help her out? Since he had mentioned it earlier that the boss would undergo a final struggle, she had a reasonable suspicion to believe he knew this would have happened. You all can stop gazing at Autumn Breeze like this. Regardless if she asked such a question or not, the boss would still proceed to summon lava golems to assist it. Su Feng calmly explained. With his credibility now, they finally stopped their gaze on Autumn Breeze. Meanwhile, she looked somewhat aggrieved towards Su Feng. If you knew it would happen, then why did you make it seem like I was a jinx? After all, It was due to his statement that caused everyone's attention to be directed at her. My bad. I just wanted to test something. I suppose we're even now. Okay? Su Feng scratched his head, referring to the time when she repeatedly judged and labeled him as a fraud. Although it still left a bittersweet taste in her mouth, Autumn Breeze could only brush past the matter and not try to argue. Of course, Su Feng didn't do this merely to tease Autumn Breeze, but he was waiting patiently for that person to make a move. And sure enough, during the time when everyone's attention was focused on Autumn Breeze, that person made a move, confirming his earlier suspicions. Well, at least that's another headache gone. He thought to himself, proceeding to instruct others on how to deal with the ongoing incident. Follow the previous arrangement and split into your respective team. No one is to focus on the lava golems. Tanks, you're to simply deflect them, but don't waste any effort on it. Su Feng commanded astonishing arrest. If we don't deal with the lava golems, then they're just going to continuously amplify. Gentle Wind suddenly chimed in, clearly nervous about the lava golems overwhelming them. Rest assured, I know what I'm doing. He chuckled softly and went closer to her, whispering something into her ear. His volume was so low that only Gentle Wind could hear it, leaving Autumn Breeze and the others nearby curious. Meanwhile, Gentle Wind's expression slowly changed from confusion to surprise. She even made a gasp but quickly covered her mouth. Shoo, keep it a secret, he warned gently. Nodding her head, Gentle Wind kept quiet and decided to wait for the timing of his signal. As Su Feng returned his focus to the Inferno Tyrant and instructed the rest, Autumn Breeze slowly crept toward Gentle Wind. Speak, what did he whisper to you about? She asked in a low but subtle tone. I'll inform you later. Gentle Wind responded and lightly tapped on her right shoulder. The moment she did that action, Autumn Breeze's expression changed for a brief moment before she returned to her original composure. She then proceeded to throw a tantrum, seemingly acting as if she was infuriated by Gentle Wind. Her actions managed to fool everyone, except Su Feng, mainly because he could somehow comprehend there was more than meets the eyes with Autumn Breeze. He had a strong feeling that her so-called childish and impulsive actions were all an act. Alas, Su Feng didn't have the opportunity to analyze further when the Inferno Tyrant resumed its attacking phase. Luckily, the members now knew what they were dealing with. Even without the instruction of Su Feng, they already knew what to do as they began to adapt to the situation, saving him a great amount of energy and effort. Phew, at least they aren't called elites for no reason. Su Feng breathed a sigh of relief. Given the attack pattern was similar to the previous one, the protocol was the same. As the boss HP bar began to drop below 50%, changes began to occur once again. Its resistance to damage increased tremendously, but the most glaring change was the fact that the lava golems began to merge. The lava golems that were ignored previously started to merge and combine into one giant being. Its size was nearly identical to the Inferno Tyrant's size. You have got to be kidding me? Is this seriously how all hell mode difficulty is going to be? Just how are we supposed to complete the raid when the difficulty is insanely crazy? Gentle Wind's guild members started to despair at these abrupt changes. Despite pouring so much effort and sweat into this, they started to lose hope of winning. At first, they wanted to blame Su Feng's misjudgment for telling them to ignore the lava golems from the start, but their rationality prevented them. After all, regardless if they would target the lava golems from the start or not, there would still be many leftovers anyway. No need to despair, because this isn't even the finale yet. Su Feng suddenly announced, garnering every attention upon him. It's your showtime, Gentle Wind. He snapped his fingers and said, I've been ready. Gentle Wind sneered as she unleashed her most powerful and mana-consuming spell. However, what caused everyone to be astonished was the fact that her spell was targeting neither the Inferno Tyrant nor the lava golems. Why is the guild leader aiming at a wall? My eyes must be blind. Yeah, that should be it. Disbelief colored their eyes as none of them believed their guild leader would miss so horrendously. Just when everyone was wondering what the hell was going on, the wall that received the impact of the spells cracked open, and soon a familiar voice echoed in the arena. I'm still alive. Chapter 54. 54. Sacrifice. The blissful tone and joyous moment of someone screaming they were still alive caused a tremendous shock to the guild members. Holy crap, he's still alive? They say good guys die early, while evil guys live a long time. I suppose it's the truth. Indeed, otherwise how else can you explain Steelshot to still be alive? They were astonished by the sudden appearance of Steelshot, whom everyone believed to have been sacrificed already. However, their astonishment had merely begun as the closer they looked, the more nervous they were. Their mouths were wide open as they realized two ferocious monsters were just right behind Steelshot. Damn, is he abating the monsters over to us? It's over. This raid is a bust. Enough of a despair talks. Can you still call yourself elite for such a shameful display? Gentle Wind loudly scolded, clearly embarrassed by her guild members. Just how could their mentality be so bad? Maybe the situation and scenario were far different than the other games they had played, but to react in such a way in front of Su Feng was extremely embarrassing for her. Stop being distracted and focus on the Inferno Tyrant, Su Feng shouted, reminding them that there was still the raid boss present. While everyone was brought back from their initial shock, they started to coordinate with each other to attack the Inferno Tyrant. As for Steelshot, he quickly rejoined Gentle Wind. Guild leader, I didn't disappoint you, he reported. Good job in baiting them at that precise location, she praised, watching the two ferocious monsters fight each other with their might. Steelshot smiled brightly, but occasionally would make some small glances at Su Feng. How did he know it'll still be alive and that I won't be in any harm? He wondered silently, clearly not expecting a message to be sent to him while he was trapped in the dead-end passage. What made him even more curious was that the buff he received from him was just adequate enough for another monster to suddenly join in and attract the monster he was facing into a confrontation. Due to this sudden change, all he needed to do was stand at the corner, avoiding any collision or damage. Naturally, he was crying and cursing Su Feng whenever he had the chance to do so. But who would have thought his guild leader would suddenly inform him of what to do next? He planned this from the start. Muttering, Steelshot subsequently stood behind Autumn Breeze, purposely avoiding Su Feng's line of sight. Although he survived, the event was still somewhat traumatizing, and he did not wish to be kicked to the front line again. While everyone was focused on their own tasks, Su Feng sneakily walked toward the two ferocious monsters. Upon approaching them, he retrieved a fire resistance potion and threw it at them, mimicking a baseball pitcher. Startled, the two ferocious monsters temporarily stopped their fighting and bare their fangs at Su Feng, clearly identifying him as an enemy. However, the moment the potions were shattered by their tough hide and the liquid slowly drenched their body, their vision became blurry. "Hey, go and be my lovely tools," Su Feng sneered coldly, watching the two ferocious monsters slowly regaining their vision. As their vision became clearer, they ignored Su Feng and instead dashed ahead toward the lava golem. Boom! A loud collision occurred between the two ferocious monsters and the lava golem, attracting attention almost instantaneously. What the? The monsters are attacking each other. Is this even a game? How come everything is so out of the norm? Nearly everyone was stunned by the scenes in front of them, and even the Inferno Tyrant temporarily halted its actions and glanced at its lava golem being friendly attacked. Roar! It tried to use a guttural roar to command the monsters to stop, yet there were no reactions. The two ferocious monsters seemed to be drunk and were gnawing and slashing at the lava golem wantonly. Infuriated, the Inferno Tyrant changed its focus toward the disobedient, ferocious monsters. Soon, a battle royale commenced within the monsters group. Don't be idle and drink your mana and health potions now. Clerics, remain in your position and wait for further instruction, Su Feng commanded at this time, telling them to use this opportunity to recover their health and mana. However, some were confused as to why the clerics were not allowed to assist them. Nevertheless, they didn't dare to idle around any further and did as instructed. Time slowly passed by, and Su Feng's lips slowly curled upward beneath the mask. Seems like you couldn't wait any longer, but the same goes for me. This raid indeed needs to end soon, he exclaimed inwardly, patiently waiting for the lava golem and the two ferocious monsters to die. Despite the Inferno Tyrant's constant barrage of attacks against the two ferocious monsters, they still managed to annihilate the lava golem until their last breath. Seeing the situation deteriorate into such, and losing his support, the Inferno Tyrant's eyes gleamed in dark redness. Here it comes. Su Feng clenched his fist, finally ready for the Inferno Tyrant's strongest active skill, Incinerate. On my command, everyone buffs Rage Heart to the maximum, he shouted, giving some buff to Rage Heart, the Berserker. Confused, Rage Heart didn't expect to suddenly be buff. Huh? Why are you buffing me? He asked in shock. Fret not, you aren't the only one. Su Feng chuckled somewhat sinisterly as he gave his remaining buff to the inconspicuous and timid female sorcerer, Silent Whisper. I forgot to mention, but Incinerate doesn't really target a single person. It can target multiples so long as the conditions are met, and currently, you two traders have met that condition. He added, his tone turned colder by the time he finished the sentence. GG Guild Leader, am not a traitor. Silent Whisper panicked and quickly turned to Gentle Wind, her expression filled with sorrow and grief. Despite her sorrowful tone and aggrieved look, Gentle Wind didn't even have the opportunity to respond when Su Feng intervened. Either way, even if you're not a traitor, you should gladly embrace the role of being sacrificed for the greater good of the team. After all, once Incinerate is used, that's when we'll have the time slot to defeat the boss. Chapter 55. Final bout. Both Silent Whisper and Rageheart were filled with disbelief at the actions and cold tone of Su Feng. Just why were they chosen to be sacrificed? And most importantly, how did he manipulate the situation into causing the Inferno Tyrant to focus on them? It was just a shame that their doubts couldn't be answered when the Inferno Tyrant already had its eyes locked on both of them and unleashed a frightening wave of heat, vaporizing them in an instant. Incinerate, the most powerful attack from the Inferno Tyrant. Not even Su Feng dared to say he had the confidence to help someone deflect it at their current level. They were guilty as charged. Evidence is not needed. Su Feng exclaimed inwardly, not feeling an ounce of guilt for sacrificing them. Although he might not have evidence to prove his claims, he was positive of his intuition and suspicions thus far. Not to mention, Gentle Wind herself was recording the dungeon from the start. Hence, they could always rewind the scenes to analyze. Meanwhile, the most astonished one was Steelshot, clearly terrified of being chosen to be sacrificed next. I'm going to be killed, right? He mumbled, glancing at Gentle Wind. Don't overthink too much, Steelshot. Lin Feng never suspected you at all. Gentle Wind flashed a calm smile, patting him on the shoulder. With her reassurance, Steelshot breathed a sigh of relief and decided to give his utmost effort, as if he was willing to make any mistakes and be mistaken as a traitor. That man could coldly sacrifice anyone in a heartbeat. I definitely can't get on his bad side, Steelshot thought to himself, holding his gun tightly. All right, stop being in a daze and follow my command. It's the final bout, and you're all going to receive a glorious moment soon. Su Feng shouted loudly, snapping everyone out of their daze. Being informed of the glorious moment in which they completed a hell mode difficulty at such an early stage blinded them all with greed. As for the matter of Silent Whisper and Rageheart being sacrificed, that would be for later. Woo, let's defeat this damn Inferno Tyrant. It'll show him who's the real boss here. Buff me and watch me tank a shot. As everyone's dopamine level reached a new height, the Inferno Tyrant became miserable by the second. Each of its attacks was no longer threatening or unknown to the players, courtesy of Su Feng's constant guide. Phew, I can finally take a back seat now, Su Feng thought to himself, turning his attention to Gentle Wind. I suggest you start to take command now and only publish this part of the video to the public to showcase your leadership ability. He kindly gave her a suggestion. Nodding her head, Gentle Wind flashed a smile. Thank for the hard work. Although his meaning might be subtle, she was able to comprehend his true meaning. Other than the fact that she would now take command of the guild, she was also reassured that there were no longer going to be any more surprises that she couldn't handle. How could she not be thankful when he literally set everything properly for her? He didn't need to do any of this to assist her, considering the new contract clauses were only about the credit being given to her, with or without proper evidence. Thus, Su Feng was technically doing her a favor by letting her gain valuable evidence. As Gentle Wind was ready to take on the mantle of leading the guild, Su Feng decided to be even more generous. I might have gotten those 2 traitors killed, but who knows if their mouths would remain shut. Su Feng whistled, looking elsewhere. Rest assured, they're not going to be able to. Contrary to his expectation, it was Autumn Breeze who responded to his hint. Oh, I see then. He nodded, unwilling to inquire further. Since she had mentioned it like that, then he was quite positive that they already made some arrangements. After all, only a fool would not take precautions regarding their members, especially those categorized in the elite. Though it was indeed a shame that he spotted not 1, but 2 traitors within Gentle Wind's elite group. Was this the reason why I haven't heard of Gentle Wind in the past? He began to wonder. With her decisiveness and straightforwardness, Su Feng found it unbelievable that such a person remained unknown during his time. That was not including the fact that her beauty was quite top-notch. Maybe just like me, she had some unforeseeable conflict and was ejected from the divine world. Sighing softly, Su Feng stopped trying to be curious and just let nature take its course. What he had with her was merely a business deal, and once the raid was completed, so would their cooperation. I need to start preparing things. Su Feng thought, beginning to plan for his next steps. As Su Feng pondered his next actions, the raid reached its climax. Keep firing and don't give a chance to recover. Gentle Wind shouted loudly. Keep in mind of its regenerative movement. The moment you spot them, immediately interrupt the actions. She added, having learned very well from Su Feng. Similar to most bosses in typical virtual reality, massively multiplayer online role-playing games, Vermorped, their actions could be interrupted. And once interrupted, it would go into a temporary stun phase, allowing players to take advantage of it. Having been sidecast on the back, Gentle Wind took extra notice of when and where Su Feng made his command to interrupt the boss. Damn, she's learning from me. Should I have charged her extra for the lesson fee then? Su Feng thought, feeling like he had been scammed. While he was wondering if he had taken a loss this time, the Inferno Tyrant was battered and weakened by the relentless onslaught of spells and attacks. It stumbled backward, and its massive form began wavering unsteadily on the edge of the arena stage. With a deafening roar, it lost its balance and plummeted into the depths below, disappearing amidst a cloud of smoke and flame. The cavern trembled as the tyrant's roar faded into silence, signaling the end of its reign of terror. System, congratulations to Silver Wind Guild for completing the Hell Mode difficulty of the Scorch Caverns. Chapter 56, 56. Silver Wind Guild. The system announcement of their raid achievement was announced 3 times. Initially, the members of Gentle Wind were still in disbelief and shocked that they actually defeated the Inferno Tyrant. However, with the loud announcement of the system resounding 3 times in a row, they finally realized the accomplishment they had done. Sheesh, we actually defeated the Hell Mode difficulty. Number 1, we're definitely the number 1 guild currently. Huh, who dares to say they're better than us now? If they dared to, then I want to see them complete a Hell Mode difficulty in such a level. As the members loudly cheered and started hugging each other for their achievement, Gentle Wind seemed to be in a daze. She was not stunned by the achievement, but seemed more occupied by something else in her mind. Suddenly, she felt a light tap on her right shoulder. Turning around, she realized it was Autumn Breeze. Heh, now that you made such an achievement, I doubt your path will be rocky anymore. Autumn Breeze smiled gracefully, void of her previous childish and amateurish demeanor. Indeed, the gamble paid off big time. Gentle Wind smiled in response, having made a sneak glance at Su Feng. I just wonder what kind of person could command such a fearsome man. She mumbled. Toward this question, Autumn Breeze held a helpless smile as well. I've been trying to investigate this Lin Feng person but to no avail. All I know is that the person behind him is formidable to be willing to give up this kind of achievement to others who are definitely not simple people. If it were so easy to investigate, then we wouldn't be having a headache now. Well, let's forget about that and savor your victory. I'm sure you wouldn't let this great opportunity go, right? Autumn Breeze chuckled softly. Curling her lips upward, Gentle Wind's smirk alone was enough to indicate that she was definitely not going to be foolish and not bask in such glory. As these two women were discussing among themselves and distributing the rewards outside the dungeon, everyone went into an uproar. How is this possible? Harold Fist stuttered in disbelief. He nearly tripped himself as he staggered backward, clearly not expecting the sudden system announcement. That's Hell Mode difficulty level. The easy mode difficulty was gruesome enough. So just how did Gentle Wind and her Silver Guild achieve it? He shouted, his expression alternating between anger and astonishment. Given the fact that Gentle Wind entered the dungeon with only her members, the system made an announcement of their guild as well, with the members being listed later on. As Harold Fist became frustrated, the others were more astonished by the feat of Gentle Wind. As expected of my goddess Gentle Wind, I know, right? The goddess is just on another level. Before entering, she even announced that she would get the first clear achievement of Hell Mode. Now look at it. She has done it. No, I cannot idle here. I need to apply to the Silver Wind Guild right now. It's the best guild currently. Indeed, it's way better than the tyrannical and usually arrogant Tyrant Fist Guild, who are all bark and no bite. Players began dissing Harold Fist and his guild mercilessly. After all, with the system announcement, it was undeniable proof that Harold Fist had been beaten by Gentle Wind. Meanwhile, one person stood in a daze, his vision focused on the members list. I did an investigation after knowing guild leader Gentle Wind was going to tackle Hell Mode, so I recognized most of the players here. Their username didn't change at all, but who is Lin Fong? There's no data on him. One Man Media thought to himself, feeling the event was somewhat fishy. Nearly everyone on the list was a regular and known member of Gentle Wind's guild in other games as well, yet the username Lin Fong had never shown up once. This clearly meant three possible situations. Lin Fong was a regular member who decided to have a change of username. Lin Fong was someone who recently got promoted to be in the elite reserve. And lastly, Lin Fong was an outsider and merely joined the guild temporarily. Out of the three possibilities, One Man Media had a feeling that it was the last situation. For such an important raid, he doubted Gentle Wind would choose someone who recently got promoted. Additionally, changing a username was quite unlikely once you and your comrades got used to the name. Hence, leaving the possibility of Lin Fong being an outsider, and most likely the key factor in their success. Of course, it was a far-fetched hypothesis, but One Man Media felt he was on the right track. While everyone was holding their own thoughts, multiple bright lights shone in the entrance. The atmosphere instantly turned silent as everyone held their breath, their gazes locked on the dungeon entrance as players began emerging. The first person in Revelation was Gentle Wind, followed by Autumn Breeze, Steel Shot, and the rest of the members. Goddess Gentle Wind, I want to join the Silver Wind Guild. My heart is about to faint. Almost everyone cheered loudly once they noticed her presence, clearly enthusiastic about her glorious return. TSK, I've lost all face and money this time. Harold Fist gnashed his teeth, giving Gentle Wind one final glance before leaving hastily. He was afraid of losing his cool and starting an attack against her, which would definitely result in their reputation to suffer heavily. Meanwhile, Gentle Wind was filled with joy upon seeing the high enthusiasm cheers and how many requested to join her guild. Waving her hand and smiling cheerfully in response to the crowd, Gentle Wind announced gracefully, "Thank you, everyone, for your cheers and praises. I'm glad to hear of your enthusiasm to join our guild, and happy to announce that we will start our guild recruitment in a few days. For further information, feel free to visit our websites or game forum, where we will post the instructions." Chapter 57. Recruitment, the original cheers and praises were heightened further once Gentle Wind gave confirmation that she was officially recruiting people for the Silver Wind Guild. Numerous people within the area were already posting in the game forum, spreading this news. Additionally, there were even some people wondering if they should leave their current guild to join Gentle Wind's guild. After all, the current hype and popularity of her guild, as well as her achievements, were undoubtedly the number one. Who else but Gentle Wind's guild managed to succeed in a dungeon raid? That too in the highest difficulty level. Of course, some factors such as her beauty were clearly included, but just that no one would be foolish enough to scream that aloud. Where did Lin Feng go? While Gentle Wind kept her appearance in responding to the crowd, she softly asked Autumn Breeze about his whereabouts. Alas, Autumn Breeze was distracted earlier by the enthusiastic crowd and failed to keep an eye on Su Feng. Huh, he's not here, she responded in confusion, clearly not expecting him to just vanish from the scene. Sigh, it seems like Lin Feng really doesn't want the attention or fame. Gentle Wind sighed softly, having somewhat predicted him to have left the scene secretly. I didn't even manage to get his contact information, she added, seemingly regretful that there hadn't been a proper opportunity to ask. Previously, her mind was fully occupied by the Scorched Caverns raid, and she was more concerned with the strategy than socializing. It was a good thing that she still got the conversation with Su Feng's boss, so not all hopes were lost. As much as she respected this mysterious boss, she wanted to do her best to poach such a talented individual to her guild. Lin Feng's talent and adaptability is just too good to be ignored, she exclaimed inwardly, promptly making an excuse to the crowd to leave, citing exhaustion. Elsewhere, Su Feng breathed a sigh of relief after leaving the premises for a good distance. Phew, I knew the effect was going to be tremendous, but still, I underestimated them. He mumbled, clearly stunned by the frantic crowd. Luckily, he managed to sneak away when everyone was distracted by Gentle Wind and Autumn Breeze beauty. Otherwise, the consequences were going to be unimaginable once he got entangled there. Just when Su Feng turned on his notification again, he was startled by someone. Hello, sorry to intrude upon you, but I'm One Man Media, and I hope to get an interview from you, Lin Feng. The person introduced himself. One Man Media? The person who spent quite the early fortune to snap a screenshot of me heading upstairs. Su Feng regained his composure as he realized who this person was. He didn't expect someone would actually be focusing on him and follow him so closely. However, once he noticed the sword near his belt, Su Feng seemed to have an idea. He must have activated a similar concealing skill, probably Shadow Step. He concluded, with Shadow Step, the swordsman could swiftly maneuver through the shadows, blending into the darkness and making it more challenging for enemies to detect their presence. It could be considered a beginner skill, but also not quite as one needed to upgrade the required skills to obtain this skill tree route. Skill tree was akin to a tree with multiple branches, and each branch is independent from others. In other words, One Man Media needed to build his skills in a specified skill tree slot to unlock Shadow Step. Since this game had guns and spells involved, being a swordsman was actually a tough class. After all, they needed to approach close to their opponent to strike. Thus, with multiple long-range attacks from other classes, it became difficult for a swordsman to win a fight. However, just because it was difficult doesn't mean it was impossible, and what One Man Media built for his class was quite on point. To have Shadow Step was an essential skill of a swordsman. His intuition and information gathering seemed adequate, and he got some brain to know where to prioritize his class to minimize the disadvantage. Su Feng thought. Meanwhile, One Man Media was somewhat nervous, afraid of being mistaken for a player killer, Piker, when he noticed the silent response he received. Please don't be mistaken. I meant no harm and only wished to interview you. One Man Media explained, going as far as raising his hands up to prove his innocence. As a swordsman, his hand should always be near the sword hilt. That way, he could always unsheath it at a moment's notice. Thus, to raise both his hands up was an indication that he didn't have any intention of fighting. Staring at him for a brief moment, Su Feng finally asked in a confused tone, "Why are you interviewing me? Everyone else is focusing on the guild leader." His manner of speech was natural and polite, even when addressing Gentle Wind. One Man Media smiled bitterly. I've done some investigation. Once guild leader Gentle Wind announced her intention to raid the dungeon at Hell Mode difficulty. Thus, I can somewhat recognize most of the usernames listed by the system, except you. So you decided to follow me based on that? Not just that. I might be overthinking here, but I doubt guild leader Gentle Wind is foolish enough to risk the success by bringing a newbie or someone recently promoted to the elite reserve. And what do you mean by that? What I mean is that the key factor of their success has to be related to you. After all, guild leader Gentle Wind wouldn't invite such a random person or team suddenly unless they are needed, One Man Media revealed. But I could have just been someone who just changed his previous username. Su Feng shrugged his shoulders, still feigning ignorance. I've thought about that too, but the possibility is simply too low. No one would suddenly change their username once their comrades got used to them. Hearing his responses and explanations, Su Feng smiled slightly beneath his mask. If you want an interview, it's not impossible, but you must join my future guild. Chapter 58. Informant astonished by the sudden recruitment. One Man Meda was speechless. He only wanted an interview. So how did it become a recruitment? That too with him being the target of the recruitment. I apologize, but I only wanted to get an interview and not join someone else's guild. One Man Media declined politely and stated his objective yet again. In case his username wasn't straightforward enough, he was literally called One Man, meaning solo. A person who enjoyed their freedom and doing things alone without being restricted by anyone or anything. There's no need to decline it so fast. Su Feng Juka Sopti. Although I did say I want you to join my guild, it hasn't even been created yet. I also don't plan on restricting any of your actions once you join my guild. Despite the explanation, One Man Media wasn't convinced as he once again politely declined. Seeing how adamant he was, Su Feng had no intention of pushing it further. There was no need to rush when attempting to recruit talented individuals. Not to mention, he was quite sure that something must have happened to One Man Media. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been zero data regarding this player. What he threw out was merely a bait and a lifesaver route for him that would be utilized in the near future. It's fine if you don't want to join my future guild, but shouldn't you offer something in return if you want an interview from me? Su Feng asked calmly whilst dropping a tiny hint. Sure enough, One Man Media instantly picked up on the hint and understood the meaning behind his words. He's accepting the interview and asking for something in return. This means he's indeed the key factor to Gentle Wind's success. One Man Media was beyond excited to have struck gold this time. Who would have thought his intuition was truly on point? However, right after the excitement, One Man Media soon turned somewhat gloomy as he now needed to find an equal value of exchange if he wanted to conduct the interview. He knew the opposite party was definitely going to ask for something valuable, especially when he rejected them twice in a row on their recruitment attempts. I don't have much valuables on me, One Man Media confessed. The current him could be considered the poorest player of the poorest. To consecutively take screenshots to post in the game forum to gain some followers, he had bankrupted himself in return. Thus, he was quite desperate right now, especially when he hit the jackpot that the person in front of him was the key factor in the success of the Hell Mode difficulty raid. The profit he would gain in return for the interview would be immense. Remaining silent for quite some time, Su Feng calmly said, "You don't need to pay me any in-game currency. Instead, you could be my informant, gathering some information and relaying it to me." Huh, but that's a bit difficult to do. One Man Media frowned. Information is even more valuable than money sometimes because of how critical that information can be utilized. Not to mention, it was no easy task to gather sensitive or worthy information. You can think about it for a while. There's no rush. Su Feng waved his hand and was about to leave. But I don't even have your contact information. One Man Media shouted in a panic. I've just sent you a private message. Also, I must correct you one thing. I'm just a subordinate. My boss is the one running things behind the scenes. He responded, sending a high message to One Man Media and establishing a private conversation. Additionally, he even dropped another bomb for him by mentioning his alias mysterious boss figure. To reel someone in, one needed to drop enough bait for them to be trapped. Sure enough, one-man media was stunned on the spot, having made another huge discovery. He was so immersed in his thoughts that he didn't even realize Su Feng had already left the scene. After all, Su Feng was somewhat surprised by the notification he received. He temporarily logged out of the game once he returned to Riverwood Town, just in case he might be targeted by some pikers. As he got out of the gaming capsule, he opened his phone message and read the text. Zhao Kai, you were right, Feng. The school competition means nothing when they're just a bunch of ungrateful people. I left in a rage midway and bought the virtual helmet for the game. It seems like the timeline had truly been changed because of my actions. Su Feng thought to himself. In the previous timeline, Zhao Kai never left the school competition and completed the entire process, albeit with little to zero recognition in the end. Hence, Su Feng didn't want him to waste time on it, even though he knew it was probably a futile persuasion. For some reason, Zhao Kai always seemed anxious, almost as if he was pressured into needing to prove himself. It was just a shame that he never had the chance to ask when he subsequently disappeared from his life while he got busy with the Reaver Guild. Let me give him a reply now. Su Feng mumbled, sending him a text. Su Feng, I'm glad you have learned how pointless the competition is. So where are you now in the divine world? Once the text was sent, Su Feng patiently waited for a few minutes, but there was still no response. Seems like he's occupied in the game. He muttered, not finding the situation surprising. Even he had to cut off from reality when doing the dungeon raid, because he needed to be in full concentration and could not afford to be distracted. Just as Su Feng was ready to re-enter the game to proceed with his next move, he suddenly heard a ringing kind of like sound. The ringing kind of sound was projected from the door, indicating someone was entering the apartment room. Smiling bitterly, Su Feng realized his plan was delayed yet again, considering it was time for him to meet the owner of this apartment. Sigh, was it a mistake to rent this room or not? He mumbled, feeling somewhat exhausted. Chapter 59. Owner. The feeling that Su Feng was having was quite complicated. On the one hand, he was glad to have rented a room in this great skyscraper. But on the other hand, he was suspicious of the owner. The employees who assisted him in obtaining the rent mentioned the reason it was available was due to the owner having financial difficulty. However, upon inspecting and analyzing the interior, it was hard to say they were experiencing any financial difficulty. Even if they were struggling, the cost of the rent wasn't that high either, so it didn't really make sense since the rent was within his budget as well. I should just stop overthinking things and just ask the owner straightforwardly. Since I'm going to be living here for a while, I need to know what kind of person they are. He thought to himself, exiting the room and walking toward the living room. From afar, he could see a slender woman's figure gracefully moving about the living room. Her long, curly brown hair cascaded down her back, adding to her mature appearance and commanding presence, which left him somewhat astonished. Hi, you must be the owner, right? Su Feng waved his hand and asked. The woman turned around and nodded her head as she stared at Su Feng. Indeed, you can call me Erica. I've got your data from the agency that listed my room, but I still want to know your name from you directly. The woman, introducing herself as Erica, responded in a stoic tone. Nice to meet you, Erica. Su Feng. Su Feng gave a bland introduction of himself without revealing anything aside from his real name. Since he needed to list real information to rent the room, he couldn't give out a fake name or use someone else. Meanwhile, Erica herself was watching every move of Su Feng when she asked her question. She was checking and scrutinizing him, most likely to ensure he wasn't some horny man in heat. Not to brag upon herself, but she could be considered a beauty, so to rent it for a man was already quite bold of her. Of course, that was because she knew how to defend herself, having learned how to fight. Thus, she was somewhat pleased to see his eyes didn't wander around her body aside from the first few seconds, probably to get a clearer look at who she was. At least he didn't have some creepy looks on me, but that could just be a pretense. Erica concluded silently. All right, I'm sure you must have been briefed by the rules and where you cannot go in this apartment, right? Uh-huh, you can rest assured that. I won't intrude on places I'm not supposed to be. Good, then you can do your own stuff. I'm just here for a few things before leaving. She calmly said and went to her room. A few minutes later, she came back out and exited the apartment. You're here for few things, but you came and left empty-handed. Su Feng twitched his mouth. With his keen insight, how could he not tell that her real motive was just to interact with him briefly? Once she accomplished that and had an early judgment on him, her objective was done. Fixing his glasses, Su Feng didn't find her behavior abnormal, given he would have done the same if their position were swapped. Not to mention, he appreciated how fast the interaction was, saving him quite the time and money. Well, time to begin my next phase without delay, he muttered, returning to his room and hopping into the gaming capsule. While he logged into the game, outside the apartment, Erica's phone was ringing constantly. Ugh, how annoying. Erica rolled her eyes as she picked up the phone and answered the call. My dear Erica, why are you causing trouble for me? A sweet voice resounded immediately once the communication connected. Enough of the sugary words, Father. You cut off my allowance just because I refused to go to the blind date, which is so damn old school now. Erica scoffed, not buying his sweet tone. And just because of that, you decided to rent one of the rooms out of your apartment? I've been informed that it's a male that rented it. Aren't you just trying to frustrate me at this point? I'm just repaying you tit for tat, Father. I don't care about the blind date or who you think is best for me. My romantic life is decided by me. I am my precious daughter. Your mother back then also reacted in such a manner. But who am I? I'm James Winston, and I managed to charm your mother through effort. So why can't you give her blind date one chance? Erica's father, James Winston, asked in an aggrieved tone. I'm different from my mother. Just how are you two different? Your appearance is nearly alike, and even your demeanor is identical. The two of you are always bullying me. Shall I call mother about what you just said? Forget it. They'll give you back your allowance, so just kick that new tenant out. My precious daughter is living with a stranger. A man on top of that? Fat chance. Well, too bad, because we signed a contract already. Erica responded flatly and disconnected the call without giving James a chance to respond. Meanwhile, on the other side, James, who was seated in the presidential room, was rendered speechless. This daughter of mine is just a carbon copy of Claire. James smiled bitterly. In his life, there are only two people who would dare to disconnect him on the spot, and that was his wife and daughter. No one else would dare to attempt such a thing toward him other than them. Sigh. My daughter is stubborn as a cow, so there's no way she'll cancel the tenant contract. But that doesn't mean it'll just stay put. James clenched his fist as he pressed a button on the desk. Yes, Mr. James. My daughter rented a room to a stranger, and I want you to unravel every last bit of details about that stranger. Remember, be discreet and ensure my daughter doesn't know about it. Understood, Mr. James. I swear if there's something unclean about that man, then he'll rip them to shreds. James vowed silently, knitting his brows with his finger. Unbeknownst to the fiasco that occurred between Erica and her father, James, Su Feng had arrived at the town hall once again. The moment he entered the town hall lobby, the area was still crowded like previously, albeit much more manageable now. It seems like most players are now interested in the Silver Wind Guild now. Su Feng dedusa inwali. Sigh. Forget it, that mysterious person had not come down since forever. Yeah, why did my guild leader want me to even camp here when that person is probably hiding? The game forum literally announced him outright. So why would he reveal himself? Agreed, I might as well use this time to see when guild leader Gentle Wind is recruiting. At the very least, Silver Wind Guild is better than my current one. As Su Feng walked around, he heard numerous players discussing Gentle Wind's recruitment. Their attention and focus are shifting at a rapid pace, with many even complaining about being forced to wait for some mysterious player. It didn't take long for these players to feel a puff of rage as they decided to drop their assignment and follow the masses to test their luck in joining the Silver Wind Guild. Hey, brother, are you going to apply to the Silver Wind Guild as well? As Su Feng was minding his own business, he was suddenly called out by a random player. Smiling softly, he shook his head in response. I'm too low level, so I definitely won't be accepted. Ah, is that so? Good luck to you, brother. With Su Feng's clever response, the player no longer bothered him as he followed ahead of the masses. Meanwhile, Su Feng's smile turned bitter as he recalled his level. That damn system is really cruel. How is the Inferno Tyrant regarded as a normal monster and gave me 1% of the total experience points only? He cursed silently. Despite his cursing, 1% of the total experience points of the Inferno Tyrant still helped him level up once. Though it could have been much more, and that was what made him frustrated. Inferno Tyrant was considered a raid boss and not a normal monster. So for the harsh debuff to apply made 0 sense. It was illogical and complete bullcrap. Alas, there was no way he could voice his complaint to anyone because the system itself was like an overlord in the game. Whatever it stated was the final verdict, and no one else could overrule that. While he was frustrated by the outcome, Su Feng was spotted by a familiar receptionist, Sandy. She was just about to open her mouth to talk, most likely to greet him, but Su Feng quickly signaled her to stop. He then pointed at her desk, seemingly trying to act as a regular adventurer. It was a good thing that Sandy understood the signal and didn't expose him on the spot. After all, there were still some players in the lobby waiting to turn in their mission for completion. Thus, if Sandy openly greeted him, then wasn't that equivalent of announcing his special privilege or identity on the spot? Sometime later, Su Feng walked toward the receptionist's desk and asked in a low but subtle tone, "What's the matter? You seem quite frantic." "Ah, Adventurer Lin Feng, surely you must be teasing me. Didn't you know your deeds have been spread across the town already?" Sandy responded, even flashing a warm smile. "My deed? Of course, to complete the notorious Scorched Caverns dungeon at your level is astonishing. Even Herbalist Elias wanted me to send his congrats to you on his behalf. Is that so?" Having cleared up his initial confusion, he now found it surprising that news of his achievement had already spread to the NPCs at such an alarming rate. Although there were many more members on the list of completion, his name was quite familiar to the likes of Sandy and Elias, given their prior interactions. Herbalist Elias knew you were going to achieve something big with the rare herbs you have given to him. Hence, he told me in advance to provide you with this if you happen to make some big achievement. Sandy smiled brightly as she informed, handing him a silver shield-like badge. As Su Feng glanced at the silver shield-shaped badge, he received a system notification prompt. "System, due to your meritorious and amazing achievement, you have been granted a noble status, Baron." A noble status just like that? Su Feng was astonished at the reward. The noble status was something every player vied for because it allowed them to gain many accesses and privileges that would benefit them thoroughly. Benefits such as being granted the authority to construct any buildings, hiring NPC guards, and even owning a piece of land within the game world were among the many privileges of a noble status. Additionally, players with noble status often received special quests and invitations to exclusive events, providing unique opportunities for advancement and prestige. It was a remarkable reward that could significantly enhance Su Feng's influence and capabilities within the game. Let me check the noble status first. Su Feng quickly investigated the noble status he received. After all, some noble status was limited to certain regions and areas only. They are not universal, and only the places that recognized or acknowledged the noble status could be utilized. A few minutes later, Su Feng's expression remained stoic on the surface, but inwardly, he was dancing in joy. The noble status was not limited to the Riverwood town, but the Etheria Empire. The difference between having a noble status limited to the town and the Empire was massive. If the status was limited to the town, then once he left the town, he would become an ordinary adventurer again. However, with his noble status limitation on the Etheria Empire itself, any town he would visit in the future that was under the jurisdiction of the Empire would have to treat him with a certain respect. Forget about the 1% experience points gained. It'll take that kind of punishment any time in exchange for a greater reward. He exclaimed inwardly.